my God. We could be streaming live.
Yeah. Keep an eye on it this time.
I think it's working this time.
Okay, good.
I was keeping an eye on it last time, but it was giving me mixed signals. What was happening is it was connecting and then unconnecting and then reconnecting. But I excoriated the poltergeist.
Okay, well,
So-
Jimmy Doan show for, what is today, the 10th?
Yep, 10th of June.
June 10th, 2018.
That's it. And we have Jimmy Doan and Catholic Curtis. That's me.
Yep.
And today's show brought to you by
Canada.
Canada. Oh, Canada. That's right. Visit
Canada.
beautiful Canada. A lovely place. And you can even get health care there if you wait in a long line.
Yeah.
So,
If it's really an emergency, you come down to the States. You drift over the border. You know, somebody was telling me that something like 90% of the Canadians live within 100 miles or 50 miles or 70 miles or something of the U.S. border.
well, sure. The rest of it's tundra.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
Well, that's like the United States. 80% of us live within 100 miles of the coast or something.
Right. Of an ocean or something.
That's right.
That's for sure. Anyway, got a couple things to talk about today. Trump's in Singapore,
Okay.
and we'll talk about that. But before I want to tell you about my day yesterday.
Okay.
Went to the beach with Mrs. Jimmy yesterday.
Okay.
Had a great time. Really good time.
Mm-hmm.
Ate there at the famous little restaurant that you have at St. Augustine. It's
Right.
actually Cedar. It's Crescent Beach. And so we went there, and then we visited some friends, walked around on the beach some.
Yeah, if you're visiting Florida and you want a nice, quiet, beautiful beach, Crescent Beach is the one.
Yeah, it is. It
you
was
can
amazing.
drive right out on the beach,
They
tote all your
actually
stuff out there.
They had it closed yesterday, temporarily,
Right.
for a while. I think it's because they were filming something.
Well, you know what they've been doing? They've been closing it to all cars that aren't 4x4s.
True.
Which is bizarro. But if you know, there's a little neighborhood that you can kind of sneak through and get
Yeah.
out onto the beach. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I know that. That's really. But it was amazing. Yesterday was Sunday.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I guess yesterday was Saturday. Today's Sunday, and what a couple things happened. Number one, the beach was not hardly crowded at all. It was really great. Got to you know me. I go up and chatted up with almost anybody. So
Uh-huh.
we met some people there and had a good time at the little restaurant, which is really a great little restaurant there, right on the beach. And but something I tried out my first Instagram.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I did my first Instagram, and immediately, I mean literally within a minute, I got responses.
Really?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I got from Scoot and from, I forget, what's her name, Carrie May.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I was blown away.
Well, maybe we'll post the show on Instagram.
That's what I'm saying. Like, there is a way. I mean, I was blown away by how quickly people, responded to
Yeah.
it. I mean, it was my first attempt, so I'm going to be doing that some more. What I had done is to take a picture
Yeah.
of my meal.
Uh-huh.
That I was having there, my crab
Yeah,
cakes.
that's one of the things they tell you quit doing, really.
Is that right? Well, maybe, but I had a little note with it that this was, we were on the St. Augustine, whatever, / Crescent Beach. So anyway, as I said, I thought that I still got some other things to do on. Now that I know my Instagram works,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to probably fire that up a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, top of the news. Of course, we talked already about Canada, didn't we, last time?
Not really.
No. Okay. Well, of course, he went to the G7 or
Right.
the G6+1 or whatever
Right.
it was, and apparently, some White House spokesman said that Trudeau had stabbed him in the back or something like that.
Yeah, and that was on the news today. They were talking about how basically after Trump left, he held a little press conference at which he was a bit more negative than he had been in Trump's presence, according
Right.
to those reports.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay. Well, what was interesting to me, of course, was that Trump cleverly left early before the two, seminars that they had. One was on women's rights, international women's rights,
Oh my God, he could have used that.
and the other was global warming. Of course, he'd pulled out of
He
the...
could have used that too.
Huh? What?
I said he could have used that information.
Yeah, right. Like he really cares.
Uh-huh.
He pulled out of the Paris thing, so he decided to skip the global warming enviro thing,
Mm-hmm.
and of course the International Women's Day is.
So they're showing the day after tomorrow. And
yeah. So anyway, he skipped out, way early before, and it was smart. I mean, he wouldn't have, he'd have just been pilloried at those two places. So for whatever it was. Anyway, so then he's
some of us in the audience here don't recognize global warming.
Yeah, right. So anyway, it's interesting to see how the battle is kind of heats up. There's people that are on that. But the other thing was, of course, now he's in Singapore. I think is he already there? I think he's
Well, before we get off of Canada here,
okay,
I want to talk about the tariff and the trade wars.
Oh, that's right.
This is it's coming out now. I mean, I guess Trump has decided one of his new favorite toys is tariffs.
Okay.
And he feels like, it looks to me like he feels like he can pressure other countries into dropping their trade barriers, or I'm hoping that's what his goal is, as opposed to just ratcheting up all the tariffs. It would be a really clever way to just raise a bunch of tax money. You just go, hey, everybody's screwing us. That's it. We're raising tariffs across the board 10%. And he would give the Treasury a nice little boost.
Right.
But I noticed that the tariff rates have fluctuated over the last 150 years pretty dramatically.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, and they used to be upwards of 60% at times.
Right.
Usually right before crashes, major depressions and such. But I would say the average somewhere around 25-30%. But it looks like it's all over the board. And for the last couple of decades, it's been under 10%.
Okay.
So that's kind of reassuring from the standpoint of, trends in government activity. One would think they would never give up once they got to a certain percentage.
Right.
But apparently...
Well, of course, the tariffs typically are very narrowly targeted.
Well, that's the thing that I wanted to talk about, because they're obviously not blanket tariffs. I mean, the largest blanket you get is over some category or maybe some country. But usually, as you say, it seems to be extremely political. The sugar people here, or the alcohol people there, or this particular truck. All of a sudden...
Oh, let me tell you, when I didn't bring it this time, but I had printed out what some of the various categories of tariffs that Canada has on us.
Right.
And they are so, it was steel wire with a thickness of 0.06 millimeters, not to exceed 22 inches in length. And then
Brand X from Michigan.
It was. They were so they were busted up when it was just wire, for God's sakes,
Right.
But they had like 40 different categories of wire that they had. On all of the stuff.
That seems to me to be political meddling at a.
Oh, it's amazing, and I understand. In the old days, of course, like I said, the last 150 years. But until the income tax came along,
right? Well, that's what it looks like they did. Once the income tax really ramped up, it looks like they were like, we don't need this, tariff, schmariff, whatever. We'll just take it off of the money and the people,
Right. Well, until the Smoot-Hawley tariff, of course, that really brought down the.
That was one of the ones that ratcheted up to 60%.
Yeah. Well, that's of course, anybody will tell you that was one of the great contributors to the Great Depression. Was the fact that we had a war on then? I mean, there were other countries also ratcheted up their tariffs. Mm-hmm. And
so what do we? I'm looking at Trump doing this, and my problem with him using the tariffs as sort of a war or a force tactic is, it seems to me like a bluff move. It seems to me like you're shooting yourself in the foot. It's kind of like okay. Don't invade me.
Yeah.
Don't come any closer.
Yeah.
At some level, they're going to be like, okay, go ahead. Give us your freaking stuff, or don't let us trade there, and we'll go somewhere else, and your market will suffer.
Anybody will tell you that the tariffs, unfortunately, backfire. They hurt us.
Right, well,
because it's like a tax on the citizens.
Right. At the end of the day, it's just a tax.
Yeah.
And what we recognize of taxes is that taxes take the profits and give them over to government, of course. And so it's obviously a huge net detriment to whatever industry is being protected or not protected. And as we've talked about, I should clarify. You can protect an industry, but then all of the other industries around it suffer. All of the ancillary industries.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
You could protect aluminum like Trump, or steel is what he's trying to do now. But what's going to happen is all the car people suffer, and the other people, the wire people, and all those people, because they can't now buy the cheaper steel and aluminum from overseas and make your other products, which pass on savings to you. And we have to recognize that the broader the trading circle, the more wealth is actually created. When you cut off pieces of the trading circle, you're literally eliminating wealth from the universe, because you're thereby not taking advantage of the Adam Smith, what he talks about, the specific advantages that a skill set here or there, one person can deliver, one company can deliver a product at a cheaper rate. That's the wealth that's created, that gets passed on. And if they put tariffs on that, it's just
what tariffs do, of course, unfortunately, is to stop trade. When people trade voluntarily, the wealth is increased automatically. Why is that? Because they both say thank you. They both get something they would rather have.
Right.
By
definition,
I would rather have this item than my money, and the other person would. I would rather have your money than this item, and so that's where wealth is created. And if you put a barrier in that, then you're doomed. That kind of thing.
Well, at some level, obviously, you can barrier yourself right out of the freaking entire trade circle.
Right. Well, this is what they happened during the Great Depression to a large extent. But again, some of the stuff, in the old days, some of this stuff was definitely protective, because I know for a fact that the shoe people were all upset with Italian shoes, so we had a
recording.
Okay.
So we're reconnected right there.
Okay, good. So anyway, all right. Well, that's. So we're now on war with Canada.
Well, that's what, and the rest of the G7 apparently were not very happy about
the G6.
The G6 now.
Well, what's interesting is that, of course, the other thing that came up is Trump said, "Well, we probably ought to have Russia in on this too."
Very interesting.
Boy, wasn't that something?
And he's absolutely right about that.
No question.
Mean that what you want is everybody in the stupid trading circle. That's the way the thing is the biggest.
Yeah.
So. I love the fact that he came out and said that. Canada, I mean, we all love Canada, but of course, there's at least, I would say, 3 states that have larger economies than Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, it can't be a huge
contributor. Still, I mean, when we get Canadian wood, for instance, well, that's, for them, it's a big deal. And for us,
I think their best export is actors.
Really? Yeah. William Shatner and the rest of them.
Man. They got Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's right.
They got some, man.
Well, and also Mark Stein, of course, is who substitutes on Rush every once in a while.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, he's from Canada. So, yeah, of course, he lives in New Hampshire now, but he's still a Canadian citizen.
Well, so I guess we'll see what's going to happen with the trade situation. I hope it...
I'm with you on that. I mean, I hope that what happens is the rest of the people say, "Oh shucks, we're going to have to lower our barriers," or whatever they're going to do, and then we quit too.
Yeah,
that would be the ideal situation. But I tell you, one of these things, when you start meddling in some of this stuff, the unintended consequences are just horrendous.
Well, right. I mean, the question is if somebody decides to double down, which everybody seems to be. Oh, okay, you're doing your tariff, we're going to do a commensurate tariff.
Right.
So then what's he going to do? Another bump on something? And it seems like he's leaning in those directions, which, as you say, it's just going to hurt us all. At some level, it's pointing the gun at yourself and saying, do not approach.
Yeah.
And I don't see that ending terribly well, but we'll see. He's the negotiator in chief, so I guess we'll find out.
Okay, so anyway, the next thing is the Singapore thing, and that Dennis Rodman has gone over there.
Thank God.
Yeah, well, he's being sponsored by a cannabis company.
Did I say dope?
No, it is. It's he found a dope sponsor. And let's see, the former NBA star is going to Singapore because
very appropriate.
Yeah, no, it is, and Long Summit, which also brings up another thing, and that is that Jeff Sessions has decided to double down on enforcing federal laws, even in states where marijuana is legal.
Well, he said that. When was the last indication? And
he said it like yesterday.
Okay.
And he said he's done fooling around now, And now
I thought just a couple days ago Trump came out and said...
Yeah, Trump said he was... That's what I'm saying. You talk about the battle between these people.
Right.
Trump
Well,
came out and said, I think it's about time to get rid of the federal marijuana laws.
Right.
And, he seemed to say that. And then Sessions...
And it is. 29 states have
decriminalized. No, I was looking at the little map, and where recreational is on 6 or 7...
Boston. Freaking, Massachusetts has recreational at this point. D.C., okay?
Yeah. D.C. has, recreational.
So...
of course, here in Florida, we got medical.
Right.
But that's...
They're working on it.
Yeah, they're working on it. Oh, yeah.
Well, to me, that's a huge issue that also dovetails into prison reform. But we got off of Singapore real fast.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is the in Singapore. Now we won't know because I don't think the meeting actually starts until Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay.
So today's Sunday, so we won't get the real head. But again. The main thing that I saw on Singapore was that Rodman was over there as a buffer or ambassador at large or something like that.
Yeah, he's a goodwill. Look, he's there for rapport.
Yeah,
I mean, he obviously has a rapport with Kim Jong-un or whatever, and you got to figure that guy has got to be one of the least reachable people in terms of personability. I mean. Probably didn't have a whole lot of normal interactions as a child.
Yeah, right.
Or
well, his father was a dictator.
Well, exactly. And it was probably like, you will play with this kid. I mean, there was his perception of interpersonal relationships has got to be just a spaghetti monster of tangled web of just ridiculousness.
Well, I think isn't this about the first time he's ever been out of the country? I mean.
I don't know.
I think he went to China once.
Okay.
But this in Singapore. I mean, it's they were talking about I forget what it was. Somehow, the hotel they're staying at, of course, apparently is the fanciest one you can imagine in Singapore, which is saying something.
Yeah.
Well,
it should be.
Yeah.
I mean, they should live it up. The whole point is to get together, have a good time. They should get some hookers.
Yeah.
They should get some Russian hookers in there. And they really want to do it right. Make him feel right at home. Like you said, get Dennis Rodman over there. Give the guy a freaking ceremonial jersey and a ball. I mean, come on, work it, and get him on board basically, and no nukes, and open up for some trade, and sort of drag them back onto the world stage.
Well, it'll be interesting. We'll have, of course, our next show is going to be Wednesday, so we should have something to say by then.
Some information.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that takes care of that. And also, the other news, a couple pieces of little bitty news. Justify won the Triple Crown. Belmont Stakes yesterday, way ahead. Not a come from behind, but horse that was at the beginning, 77 days before the first race. Nobody ever heard of the horse.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Really just a real surprise.
I heard Soros backed him.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Could be, he could be. That would scare the shit out of the horse, so he was going to run for his life. Okay, next thing is, another little tidbit here, is that Vermont is poised to require that all residents have health insurance, which I think is kind of interesting. They're going to do the
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now that's Bernie's place, right?
Yes. That's Bernie's place. Now, of course, just as an aside, of course, they decided to keep Bernie out of the next race. They passed new rules on the Democrat thing, and that is you have to declare yourself as a Democrat in order to run on the Democrat ticket. So, but yeah, Vermont.
That's right, because he was obviously taking advantage of the Democrats last time.
Yeah, no, he was totally. He was. I mean, he caucused with Democrats.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, but I don't know, but you're supposed to announce, somewhat ahead of time before you actually start campaigning.
Right.
Before they let you in. You actually have to go and be a member of the party.
Right.
Which so far,
well, they better be careful what they wish for, man.
Yeah.
He'll run on the damn socialist ticket and whoop their ass.
Yeah. Well,
seriously, he would steal half their base or something.
Oh.
At this point.
There was another thing that I saw, speaking of the socialists, I think it's in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of socialist women, absolute, total socialists, that
Oh, yeah.
won.
What?
In the Tuesdays.
They won?
Yeah, they won. Well, they won the primary.
Oh, okay.
But they're going to get
up
the
against
run
themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll
in
see.
In Montana, I mean,
Yeah, that's weird.
And they're, I saw them there. I think there were either 3 or 4 of them. They had, but they
I
were.
guess we're going to find out pretty soon how bad things are on the college campuses if socialists really actually start winning races.
Yeah.
I mean, that's we're at the point now. I was watching a conversation between Ben Shapiro and some other guy. When they were talking about the shift basically in Western values, and there's just people these days who are just
one of this guy, I saw him also, Ben Shapiro. I saw him talking with a fellow who claimed himself to be a libertarian socialist, and of course, it didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I was going to say,
it didn't make any sense at all.
I'm a Democratic Republican.
Shapiro shredded him, but the guy didn't realize he was being shredded. I mean, he kept sticking to his guns, and Shapiro says, "But you're not."
Right.
If this is no libertarian things, whatever you're talking about. So anyway, he went to that. Apparently, in New Jersey, Governor Phil Murphy also signed a similar law the other day that has health insurance for all the New Jerseyans, and the penalties are the same. If you don't pony up, if you don't have the health insurance, it's $500 first time and $1,000 the second time, and all that.
Right. Well, we're very close to the Omnibus Health Care Bill Act now. Which Justice Thomas speculated on, I think, during the race case. And he basically said, we're at the point where if Congress wants to, they can pass a bill called the Omnibus, Health of America Act or something. And they can basically force us to do all kinds of stuff after making findings that it's beneficial to America and it interferes with interstate commerce. If they don't do it.
Right.
And it's bizarro, but this is the kind of stuff that we're looking at now. Yeah. And we need a huge pushback against the socialist policies, and I'm full on ready to debate people about, fire departments and health care and whatever, because, let's talk numbers when it comes down to it.
Well, it's interesting because you see people are talking about the bad old days in some respects, but when you realize the before there were fire departments, there were volunteer, that kind of stuff, and they pretty much put the fires out. I mean, they didn't, or you had insurance or something along those lines.
Well, we don't have to go back to that. What you go to is a private system.
Yeah, right.
If they're doing such a great job, let's see the numbers. Let's see how much you cost.
Right.
What things you're saving, on average, and that kind of stuff, and how much it costs to have that many people, ready to go at a moment's notice when the fire bell rings.
Yep.
And so, but to just willy-nilly throw it to socialism and say, well, this is just socialism is a good system because we all like to have fire protection is just that's a fallacious argument. I mean
food is a good item too, but we don't have socialized food. You got the Winn-Dixie across the street from the Publix.
Right, but that's what's the push is. Yeah, we do. The push is we need universal basic income because we're giving people medicine and food and unemployment, and so that's literally like a keystroke away from universal basic income. And if all your bases are covered, then you don't have to worry about anything else. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to achieve anything. You don't have to do anything. You just hang out, I guess. But
then, of course, you start to ask yourself, where's that money coming from?
Well,
print it.
Yeah, print that shit up.
Print it up. That's it.
Well, we'll get Tom Wells on here to defend that argument soon.
Okay.
The guy running for Congress I ran into the other day.
Yeah.
And he full on believes in Bernie's programs, so maybe we'll get him in here.
Well, they did. Of course, we have a little socialist utopia here in Gainesville. We have a little blue. Alachua County is kind of a blue place in the middle of all red country around here in Florida.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're much more so than everybody else, and yeah, I think it comes down to individual services more and more are becoming socialized.
Yeah, they are. I mean, and of course they have. And I'm going to talk about this here in just a minute about the as we've talked about some of the bureaucratic way that the country and various places are being run by bureaucrats and non-elected people. And to give you an example here, here's another one. A 72-year-old Bradenton woman faces 2 misdemeanor charges for chopping down mangroves in her backyard without a permit. A professional mangrove trimmer is required for mangroves between 10 and 24 feet. Removing mangroves or trimming mangroves greater than 24 feet requires a permit.
Hell yeah.
Her troubles don't end there.
Think of the environmental devastation. Think of the global warming she could contribute to by going out there just willy-nilly with a machete.
Well, they have what they call riparian rights down there in Bradenton area.
Right.
She was on a canal or something, and she was slapped with a $500 citation in February for not getting permission to remove the mangroves. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Committee also filed 2 misdemeanor charges against this woman for alteration of mangroves without a permit and failure to possess a mangrove cutting permit. And then one of her neighbors says, what she did is absolutely unforgivable. It's a pretty big deal. Well, absolutely unforgivable.
God, that is so over the edge.
I mean,
it's
a cut down some
tree.
mangroves.
Yeah, seriously, give it some time, it'll grow back.
Yeah, well, they're requiring her to plant new mangroves, 24 reds and 24 whites,
right,
or whatever it is. I mean,
sounds discriminatory.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But
you sit there and talk about overreach on the permit department. These permit people are they're pretty much out of control. There was. And to kind of finish this up here, well, it's only about 30 minutes into. We can cut and maybe come back afterwards. But the one thing I did talk about permits, there is on Facebook or YouTube or something. There was a guy, a codes enforcement guy, who showed up at a barbecue. A guy was having a backyard barbecue, and he says, "Your neighbors are complaining about this smell, the barbecue smell." And he says, you can't, you're allowed to have the smell on your own property, but you can't have it go into somebody else's property. I mean, he was making a serious case on this. This went on. I mean, it's like a 10-minute video of this codes guy.
Well, as we've talked about before, as soon as you give somebody a paycheck and you say your job is to prevent the smoke from going over these people's thing, well, man, they're going to do it.
Well, what was interesting, I didn't get to the part where he had his little codes book with him, and he kept opening it up, and I guess he was going to cite the law, smoke code, or whatever it is. But you sit there and you think,
nose nuisance.
I just, and who doesn't like the smell of a barbecue? I'm sorry.
Right.
I mean, give me a break.
We're wafting it over there. We're not charging him for the wafting.
That's right. Well, so suddenly all his neighbors decide, geez, that looks pretty good. I think I'll fire up my barbecue.
Right.
And everybody around him.
And that's how it contributes to interstate commerce.
Right.
And so that's why Congress can regulate backyard
city. This apparently is a city.
No, I know.
But I mean, you sit there and you look at this codes guy. You reminded me of the guy that came here. We're coming up here on football season, and one of the things that we do is we park cars on my lawn here because of walking distance to the games. And but they have a codes enforcement guy, unless you have a permit to park cars on your lawn, your own private property, unless you have a permit, which costs like $50. And by the way, it must be properly displayed.
Well, yeah.
You can't just have it. It has to be properly displayed. And otherwise, it's
I'm going to cite you for improper display.
Well, I mean, if you get the second citation you get is like hundreds of dollars.
Right.
And the permit itself is like $52.50 or something. But as you know, what we do here is we have voluntary donations, and with suggested amounts, but voluntary nonetheless. And but the codes enforcement guy, when you look at this guy, he lives 30 miles from here and someplace, I forget, Stark or something, and he's been hired on the weekends, the game weekends, and you look at this guy, and he's, we're just a working class Joe. I mean, they pay him obviously, but he's a little overweight and a little, the clothing doesn't match and all that kind of stuff, and yet he's got a badge and a little ticket book, and so he's allowed to go around and write them. And as I mentioned to you before on previous time, if everybody bought a permit, the city might get another $10,000. Okay, this is out of a $30 million budget. Okay, they might get an extra $10 grand.
Yeah, well, that's not going to stop them.
No.
Permitting and regulations and licensing; those are the blobs that are consuming our society.
Yeah,
and just stifling everything. And
it is stunning when you look at that. To kind of dovetail into that, you see we talked about it, on Wednesday about the lemonade stands, and the people are coming around, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old. And they came around and shut them down. What's interesting is, as a backlash to that, the cops all some kids went out and set up their little lemonade stand. I forget where it was, but there was like 50 cops that came by and bought lemonade from them. And so this is like the thing that they did here in town when one of the cops would play basketball with the kids. Some neighbors had called up and said the kids are running wild. They're a lot of noisy and everything. And the cop went over and said, "Hey, let me shoot a few."
Yeah,
and that made national headline news. I mean, it was on Good Morning America and everything about how this is like the one cop that that spoke for everybody, I guess. So, but yeah, the permitting is these people are so officious. They had one where they cited a gal. She had to go take the cosmetology business. $10,000 or whatever it is in 6 months or whatever, because she wanted to braid hair, and of course they don't teach braiding in the cosmetic. They don't teach that. So they have to, everything else though, how to wash and clean and dry and everything, and which chemicals to use and all that kind of stuff. Right. And you sit there and you think, have you just completely lost your mind? I mean,
it's just incremental. It's just incremental growth. It's just the concept. I mean, you hear it out of people's mouths all the time. Well, I'm for marijuana as long as it's regulated and licensed and approved. And it's like the standard mantra you hear people say all the time these days whenever they're in favor of something, but for licensing. It's like they want everything to have. Nobody wants to be seen as being irresponsible or anything like that, but they don't understand the individuals involved can take care of it all.
Well, not only that, what happens is a lot of it, when you see the licensing, it's designed to keep people out of the business. Like lawyer licensing and real estate licensing. I mean, you can't,
Well, sure, the more developed it gets, the more...
And what you find is, even when you find this kind of stuff, I mean, Mrs. Jimmy, for instance, does interior decorating. But if she did interior design work, or I forget which one is which, she would have to go to school and have a license for it all.
Right.
But she doesn't, and of course people just worship the ground she walks on because she's so good at what she does. Anyway.
Well, we were talking about Canada earlier and the healthcare stuff, and this is right up that alley as well because if they got rid of the licensing stuff with all the doctors and.
Yeah. Well, they always come up with the hyperbole. They come up with the hypotheticals.
Right.
And they say, well, what would happen if so and so? And the other thing you have to remember that when a group is licensed, of course, they can be a very small vocal minority and create a complete hubbub and go down to the city commission or the county commission and say, we need to don't make this a voluntary thing because, this hypothetically what's going to happen is people will die in the streets and the blood will run wild, if you don't.
You'll hire your neighbor to do your brain surgery.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
speaking of brain surgery, I'm binging on House.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I finished. I told you last time that I finished binging on the Doc Martin business, but I'm still waiting for season 8 to show up. But but now I started binging on House, which is always kind of interesting. One of the things I find that he does is broad spectrum antibiotics. I mean, that happens in about every third episode. He tries everything for the first, and then suddenly the little light goes on, and they find out what it really is. It's kind of cute. One thing you can do is you can watch each show individually. It doesn't have a going on. Anyway, that's pretty much what I've got.
That's all. I got nothing this week, so sorry, y'all.
No, it's fine. It's a short one.
Yep. So, thank you for tuning in. If you tuned in, and we will be back on Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yep.
Looks like this thing streamed out live, so we hope you got a chance to see it. It'll be up there anyway in full format, one way or the other. So send us an email, message, IM, Instagram, Snapchat, anything you want.
Yeah, Instagram.
Yeah, that's it.
Now that I'm on Instagram, like you say, I had to try this one, but like you say, too many people, you see the Instagram and you go, like, who cares? But you can do a little video on Instagram now.
Right. Yeah.
So that's something that's kind of interesting. So now I got to find something. I got to find something in my life that's interesting.
We'll explore it.
Yeah, I have no life.
All right, y'all. See you later.
Yeah. Okay.